Economic literature on this is pretty unambiguous.
Are we moving towards a Great Depression recession? And what are we doing now in the stock market? You don't want to be doing what the rest of the crowd is doing. When people are thinking the economy is doing well, buy stocks, that's a sign of, hey, what's coming up is going to come down. Yo. Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome to episode 80 of the Thoughtful Banter podcast. This is your host, Mahdi, with my co-host, Hussein.
Yes, sir.
Today, we in the Thoughtful Banter studio right now. More like my apartment. Hussein is about to head out of the best state in the 50 states.
That's crazy. That's a crazy claim.
Back to one of the lesser states. So, while he told me, he said, while you have me, use me. So here we are. We're taking advantage of his time. Saying, how you feeling?
We good. We got a bit to talk about. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but in that last episode that is doing pretty well, we actually had a lot more to talk about that didn't end up getting recorded, or at least we have the audio recorded that we've released or we plan to release for the patrons.
Which is a great call to our Patreon. If you guys want to support the channel just to help put money in our pockets, we're not monetized on YouTube. You just want to support the show and get some exclusive content, just go there. It's not like a huge thing. We're honestly not as consistent as we should be over there, but you will get exclusive content. And we talk about some spicy topics over there. But today we have some other spicy topics about the future of America. And economics, which is one of Hussein's favorite subjects. So I'll start off with asking you the question, Hussein, right? We got a lot going on right now in the economy. Stock market is down.
Liberation Day, right? That's what Trump called it, Liberation Day.
We're going to be winning so much. You're going to say, stop winning,
that's
please.
Basically the day, which is yesterday, where he announced, or maybe the day before, but he announced all the tariffs that he was putting on these countries. And he specifically... It's so funny because one of the big critiques about his presentation is that he had this chart where he was talking about the tariffs that these countries all levy on America, and America doesn't do anything to them, or it's like a fraction of what America's tariff on those countries is a fraction of what their tariff is on us. And all the numbers are wrong, completely. Almost all of them were completely made up. And a lot of people were saying he probably what he's actually referring to is a trade deficit, the trade deficit, not basically how much America imports from that country versus how much that country imports from America. So that's the trade deficit between these countries. And then the reason they were speculating that it was the trade deficits that he was talking about is they were I literally went onto ChatGPT and asked it to calculate all this stuff. From all these different countries, and this is the exact formula it used, and it spit out these same exact numbers. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it is hilarious, even if it's not true, just to think about. Because you could definitely see Trump. Unfortunately, you could probably imagine Trump doing something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, the Trump tariffs kicked off. The stock market has been plummeting.
We're seeing job losses. I'm seeing on LinkedIn people I know. Little people I know who are more advanced in their careers, professionals, senior people who unfortunately have lost their jobs. So a lot's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of, the economy bros, right? The finance bros in the spaces. They're putting out the predictions. I'm seeing people who are, more right wing leaning, more left wing leaning. I want to ask you, Hussein, what are your predictions for the rest of these 4 years?
Okay.
On the economy, what do you think our economy is going to look like for the rest of Trump's presidency?
As far as long term, even Trump's presidency, 3 to 4 years out, honestly, don't have a good answer or a good idea. But what I will say is, on tariffs specifically, I think the economic literature is pretty unambiguous and clear about how they're not good, how they're inflationary, because what happens when you impose a tariff is that any American company that is importing goods from a country that has a tariff placed on it, it is the American company that actually pays the tariff, right? So if there's a 49% tariff, which there is right now on Cambodia and anything that's imported from Cambodia, then whoever is the American producer or the American company that's shipping things over from Cambodia is paying the cost of those goods plus an additional 49% that they pay to the U.S. Customs. So it's not actually Cambodia that's paying for them. And so what happens is that producer of that thing or the company that is importing those goods, they're going to try as best as they can to pass along most of that cost to the consumer. Right, so it's inflationary because now things are going to get a lot more expensive, and the average American buying power is going to go down. Especially when you consider that a lot of our clothes, a lot of our plastic goods, a lot of our even like metal goods are almost all imported.
Yeah.
Now the Trump, like I guess the pro-Trump crowd, what they say is, and this is what Trump himself says, is that eventually, I think there was even I don't know how true this. I'm not going to quote this from Trump, but basically the thought process is that because basically the American companies, what they're going to do is they're going to realize that hey, it's not worth importing these things and paying this extra tariff. So what we're going to actually do is now we're going to be incentivized to create our own manufacturing within the United States.
And I want to ask you about that. I'm gonna give you a moment to sip your tea.
Yeah,
See you're
yeah.
grabbing for it, and I'll talk a little bit about it, and I want to hear your thoughts, right? Because I'm hearing from like the economists. I don't want to call them like Trump voters. I don't know what they voted for, but the economists are thinking like, hey, this might be like a great plan, right? This might make more jobs. Like there's this prediction, right? Like, hey, these manufacturers, instead of going to China or Thailand or wherever, they're going to say, hey, you know what? To avoid these tariffs, we're just going to start putting, our factories in America, and that's going to create jobs for Americans. Again, I don't really know much about the whole situation at all. I've heard that though, that like that would be a good thing. But one thing that kind of doesn't make sense to me when I hear that is like, do we want factory jobs?
Yeah, okay, that's the perfect idea.
Yeah.
So before we even get into that, again, like I said, the economic literature on this is pretty unambiguous. If you go back to Adam Smith, who's considered like the father of capitalism, right? He talks about free trade and how free trade is much better than protectionism, right? Which is, having everything in your country or whatever. The reason that is because every single country might have something that they're better at doing than another country, right? And we do this in our everyday lives too, even in businesses on a smaller scale. And similar to how if you're running a business, say I'm running a online fitness coaching business, I'm really good at coaching people in fitness, right? I'm not as good as building my social media presence, right, and my marketing presence. So what I might do as the founder of this company is I hire someone who's better at that, right? And so I can allocate my time to making more money on the thing that I'm actually good at. And actually the difference that I pay, like what I save myself in that payment in time is worth way more than what I'm actually paying out to that company.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the pretty simply put, this is the idea between like,
and this is our economy,
a free trade and
right.
These global economies and stuff.
And Trump's trying to make it that, oh no, we're going to go back to doing things that we used to do that now other countries got better at, and we've benefited from.
And we've benefited for
we,
years.
We used
right?
to make cars, and like I think people are really held up on that, right? Like people, that's a common thing. Oh, we used to make cars, we used to make coal, whatever. And it kind of goes to like I think like, and I don't know how else to say this in a way that doesn't sound bad, but it kind of goes, I feel like, to this notion of like there is this very poor white population in America that used to have jobs, and they don't have these jobs because these jobs aren't high skilled labor jobs, and they haven't adapted to the new economy. So right? And these people just want these jobs, and it's like I guess like. I mean, like, on one point, I understand why these people want these jobs, right? On the other hand, I'm like, well, what's America's biggest export now? Are
you asking?
Yeah, you don't know.
No.
Okay. I wasn't ready.
In the meantime, like, since we've, kind of globalized as an economy, our workforce, to your point, has become one of the most highly skilled workforces in the world, right? So then the question is like, okay, do we want people who could have been coding, right, or could have been um, integral pieces of these American startups, people who are at OpenAI, like stuff like that? Do we want people who could have been doing those things instead looking for manufacturing jobs that barely keep the lights on?
That are going to be soon given to robots, anyways.
I mean, if we get to that point, yeah,
robotics is moving that direction.
Robotics might be moving that direction in the next 10 years. We might not even need people, actual people, to be on these, assembly lines and stuff, right? So that's like the quintessential question. I think for most unpartisan economists are pretty clear that, yeah, we probably don't want that. And even there are tweets from like JD Vance himself, like years ago, talking about how we should avoid protectionism and we should instead work on maximizing free trade. And the good thing about free trade and this whole competitive advantage thing that I'm telling you about is also that it is a war. It acts as a deterrent for war and aggression too, right? Because if I'm reliant on China for X amount of whatever comes in from China, steel, let's say from China. China is one of the biggest steel manufacturers. So I'm reliant on X amount of steel from China every year. I'm also a lot less likely to do anything to provoke China to attack us, or they attack us, or we attack them, because there's an existing relationship that we have through trade.
Right.
So it also, that's like another aspect to it where it also acts as this deterrent against even war.
Right, and that's like when capitalism is like used well. Like we see like how the world's a more peaceful place. It's like, hey man, if we're all eating, why am I trying to bomb my neighbor? Like you force everyone to rely on each other in some way for there to be peace. Now, I'm sure we could continue talking about this for all and on, but I think simply put, at least at now for a fact, the economy is taking a hit. Time will tell if all the other countries are just going to actually come to the table of America and say, please, we'll pay your tariffs or whatever, and this will help. You don't think this is going to happen. I'm dubious that it will happen. Maybe it will happen. It's good for us if it does happen, but I'm somewhat dubious. You're dubious as well, right? But for right now, the economy is taking a hit. So the next question is, are we moving towards a Great Depression recession? Mm-hmm. And what are we doing now in the stock market?
Buy the dip.
Buy the dip. Right. So I've been following these YouTubers. One of them is called.
This is not financial advice.
This is financial advice. So no, it's not. But I've been watching some YouTubers. One of which is called Why I Learn. Other one's called BizPath. They're these guys. They're like guys in their late 20s or mid 20s who are like business people, and they have Call of Duty commentary channels, only playing the old CODs. But these guys both have six figures and $6-figure or $1 million portfolios. Uh-huh. And they just make videos about buying the dip. I think they make pretty good advice, right? And as far as I can tell, this is coming from someone who's a beginner investor, right? Yeah. You don't want to be doing what the rest of the crowd is doing. When people are thinking the economy is doing well, buy stocks, that's a sign of, hey, what's coming up is going to come down. And when people are selling their stocks, when they think, hey, man, I need to get my money out the market, well, that's the only time that stocks are on for a discount. Mm-hmm. And if the economy is going to recover, right?
If the economy is going to recover.
Right, I'm going to buy.
Yeah.
Now, that's why I'm saying, to me, I'm thinking, well, this is one of the best economic opportunities of my lifetime. I'm going to put every free $20 I can find in the stock market. But the only way that's not a good thing for me to do is if we generally are going through true American economic collapse. Right. But my thought process is, well, if that's actually going to happen, then my money itself isn't even going to be worth anything anyways. Mm-hmm. Right?
So you might as well.
What's my cash worth?
You might as well potentially come out on the other side.
But I'd rather bet on I'm already living here. I'd rather bet on the country that it has probably the most robust economy on earth.
Yeah, if not one of, if not the most.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. We might take a hit. It might even be a couple of years, but is it going to be Great Depression worthy? Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I mean, I don't know.
What do you think?
I I don't know. I have never lived through the depression, right? Not like this. Like we lived through '08, but we were also 9 years
kids.
old.
I was
right?
living. Oh wait, best time of my life. Modern Warfare 2.
Right?
Let's go.
We
Oh
lived
wait.
through '08, but we were also 9 years old.
My
right?
dad was
So-
dressing through 08, not me. I was gaming, bro.
we obviously weren't around for the Great Depression,
right.
right? So like I honestly I can't say, but it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, that's really all I can.
So you have no prediction.
I have no prediction. I have no prediction.
I like that. I just think open.
Yeah, I have
So
no prediction.
what do you have like any plans you want to share with us?
I'm also fully willing to. I'm fully open to the potential that Trump is a madman and has some crazy. I don't think it would be something that happens intentionally, but I'm also open to the idea that maybe this plan could, on a like decent time horizon, actually be better for us than like maybe he does bring all these countries to the table, right?
That'd be crazy.
I don't think so, but like on the off chance that it happens, like I'm also open to being like eating crow for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna be mad if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we're it'll be good for us if America does well.
Yeah.
We're Americans, right?
But yeah, as far as like a recession I'm not sure. What scares me more than any of the economic stuff that's going on is something that we talked about last week, which is ICE's targeting and Donald Trump's targeting of legal residents in the United States of America.
Yeah.
That's what's far more concerning to me
Than the economy.
or even the potential of a recession, right?
Right.
Because, even though the people lived through the Great Depression and it was hard, it was rough, a lot of people came out the other side of it better off.
Right.
Right. I was reading this one tweet on Twitter that said, my boyfriend keeps repeating, we had to go through Hoover to get to FDR, right? Like we had to go through Hoover, who was an awful president, to get to Roosevelt, who, did the New Deal, and then and led us through the Great Depression. Everyone was better off for it, or a lot of people was. People will quibble about the New Deal, but I think on balance, it was net positive, right? So that's like, even if a recession is on the table, like I'm pretty sure the American economy is resilient enough to at some point break through it.
Right.
But what's more frightening to me is this thing about legal residents and ICE snatching people up, ICE even snatching up illegal aliens and sending them to the wrong places, right?
Or snatching up legal aliens,
or snatching up
accidentally
legal residents,
shipping them to the wrong country, and then the courts are saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they're like, "Our bad. We can't do anything about it now.
We can't bring them back." Exactly.
What the hell?
Exactly.
Imagine I'm in Venezuela. I'm Mexican.
The reason it scares me is because, and this can get into a conversation where like, what do we do as Muslims living here, right? But the reason it scares me is that, okay, first it was illegal immigrants, right? Right. It was people who were here illegally. Sure, we don't want them in the country, whatever. Now they're swooping up legal residents, green card holders, right? Who, by the government's own admission, have done nothing explicitly in line with any kind of terrorist organization or a threat of national security, right? Or even a crime in some cases.
In every case I've seen, no, not a crime.
Not even a crime.
Not even a crime.
So now it's legal residents who are getting this treatment. Sure, they're not citizens, but they're here legally. They were given permission to be here by the United States government. And it just makes it feel like what's coming and what's closing in is eventually certain citizens who are not acting the way that people want them to act might also be under this level of scrutiny, right? And we've already heard Trump talk about repealing the 14th Amendment, which gives people birthright citizenship. Now, does he mean that going forward there will be no more, birthright citizenship? Maybe. Does he mean that he's going to kind of retroactively look back and strip people of their birthright citizenship? Who knows? Like, it's really that, and that to me is like far more frightening. Like,
so what do you think we do as Muslims right now? We have Muslims. We have a moral responsibility what do we do if this? What do you think we do if this worst case scenario comes about? I have thoughts about this.
It's this idea of this concept of hijrah, this concept of traveling, like the Prophet did in Mecca, right? He was in Mecca, his religion, his life was under attack, so he left. He migrated to Medina, or Yathrib, that
Right.
became Medina to Nabi. So now I feel like, potentially depending on how things go in the next 3-4 years, that actually is a lot more on the table than it ever has been, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that really the difficulty there is friends and family, because I think ultimately, like, I'm so I'm so community and just people oriented. Like, I feel like what makes home is the people around
of
you.
course.
And like I love being in America. I've only known America, but like I couldn't imagine even if things were burning down here, if like all my family was just staying, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to Canada, for instance. Like, what's life in Canada? But at the same time, I have a moral responsibility to take care of my family, my immediate family. Like, if I can't control you, for instance, or my in-laws or anybody else, but I can tell my wife and, like, let's say my children, if I have children, like, hey, we're going to do this. I have the responsibility to take care of them first. But it's also like, but what if people aren't on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but where would you go? I guess that's the real question.
Well, I'm not going to let it because ICE listening. But I would say, it should be a place of.
I don't think, potentially controversial, I might get flamed in the comments, and we can even debate on whether we should leave this in. But I don't think a lot of the Muslim countries, or quote unquote Muslim countries, are even great options.
Right. No, I actually completely agree. I think my first options would be places. I mean, America is really nice, and I think let's first really break it down. I think America's nice in my opinion, and that's on the foundation of like a three-legged stool, and those legs are one, economic freedom and opportunity, social, and just like social freedoms and opportunity. And the third one is
maybe too much social freedom, but anyways.
And the third one is diversity. So like, I feel like if one of these things completely collapses, I'm like, the benefits of being in America are outweighed by the cons of everything else, right? But I'm willing to put it up of these three things stand, and I'm looking for these three other things in another country. So Canada has these things, and like some like I think Thailand to an extent, like not bar for bar, like Thailand doesn't have a booming economy like here. But for instance, if like you're working remotely and you're American
if
citizen,
you're working for an American job or like a Western job,
and you have some money saved up, you have your business off to an extent, and you bring your money over to Thailand, for instance, or like Malaysia, you'll be living very well for very cheap, and you should have enough time to get a job there and be comfortable and not deplete your savings. So like there's options like that. I wouldn't go to like. Yeah, like a lot of the Muslim countries, to me, aren't preferable, honestly. Go to Saudi. Why would I go to Saudi? To get persecuted for being Shia? You think we could record this podcast in Saudi? They're like, if you're not glazing the government every episode, you're off of here. They'll go to episode 1, they'll be like, yeah, you're off. That's the thing, right? It's like,
yeah.
So it's not for me. Maybe Kuwait. Kuwait's like, yeah, you're cool, kind of.
I mean, Mexico is like, but that might be too close, right? Like Canada, the thing I'm thinking about in like Canada and Mexico is that if America stuff really starts going down in America, it's like they border these countries, right? So I'm not sure how like how spared they're actually going to be.
So I think it depends on what kind of circumstance. Like, if we're in a situation where they're preventing people from leaving and like we're actually warring with our neighbors,
I mean that seems like really out there, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, we're saying they're contingencies for a reason. If that situation is even happening, it's not like you're going to be able to catch a flight to another country that's even further. So you would actually need to go to a neighboring country that you share a border with
first,
just to get there as a
That's
refugee.
True.
And then from there, you catch a flight to wherever you want to go, hopefully, right? Like, I think that's the way it would work. And if that's not happening, then you can go from here straight to wherever you need to go. I would just say like a couple of things are worth doing. I think if you're actually considering leaving the U.S., you should do these three things. Number one, you should get your paperwork in order. Get your passport updated. Check like your visa status of wherever you want to go. Second thing is you should definitely get your finances in order, right? At least I would say, like, if you're trying to move to another country, it ideally should be going somewhere that's cheaper than here. For every person in your family leaving, I would recommend at least $20,000 for moving to another country.
Jeez. Depends on where you move, but yeah.
I mean, even if you go somewhere really cheap, why not? That's not. I mean, that's honestly not a lot of money considering you're uprooting your whole life. And also with that, you should also have some kind of international bank account, right? That would allow you to actually like move money around, right? Or else you want your assets to be frozen. And the third thing is just like preparing. Like this step is like more nuanced, but
you put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah. The third thing is like actually preparing not just a to-go bag, but like just you have to think about everything you're leaving behind. Like you're not if you're actually leaving this country because you're scared for your life and your freedom, your liberty, brother, you shouldn't be packing more than one bag per person. You have to like really downsize your thinking, like what's important, what's not important, getting all your documents in order, having papers and documentations, everything, putting all that data in a cloud with like multi-factor authentication, so like your data is safe but you can access it. You got to think about all these things, right? If you're moving to the other country, like if is your cellular provider going to be active there? If not, and you're using 2FA that's connected to your phone, that's not going to work. So you have to think about these kinds of things. Just cross your T's, dot your I's. Just really think about really what it means to be leaving the country.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. That was a little short and sweet episode.
Unfortunately,
I have to get going, so we're going to call it here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 80 of the Thoughtful Banter podcast. Any cool comments or thoughts or ideas, please drop them down. We'll be in touch. We'll see you guys next week or sometime. Peace.
Peace out, guys. Salam.